Hello and welcome to our first Unend Roundtable. My name is Jared Deiro, lorekeeper of the MIDST Cosmos, and I am joined here today with the creators and narrators of the podcast Unend. I have Matt Roen.
Hello.
Sara Wile.
Hello.
And Zen.
Hey, Jared. We can't wait to do this. We're back.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Just want to drop this real quick. A quick disclaimer. Spoiler warning for anyone not caught up with Unend. This conversation will be chock full of spoilers as we discuss the first season of Unend. So, if you have not listened to season 1 of Unend, please join us in the fold for this immersive sci-fantasy cosmos exploring soundscape podcast full of incredibly rich and wildly fun characters as they journey through the furthest reaches of the cosmos.
Nice.
Tasty spoilers.
I want to hear this podcast.
It's too good. For the new listeners, I do want to just introduce the three of you guys. Have you three just really quickly introduce yourselves and your key roles on the show.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Sara. I do the official character portraits. That's it. That's my job, and some voice acting and some storytelling. But we all share that.
And the beautiful ephemera that we see throughout.
I do the graphic design and illustration on the beautiful ephemera, though many of the text portions of those are contributed by another member of Third Person.
That's me, Matt Roen. I help do a lot of the writing on the ephemera for Unend, and like Sara was mentioning, we all get all of our fingerprints kind of all over everything. It's really quite a mess, but we have a lot of fun assembling it and putting it together and telling the story. But the story that we tell is augmented by a particular kind of auditory addition, but that's done by someone else on Third Person.
Yes, there's a portion of the podcast that comes through the sound waves that you're hearing in your ears. That's handled by Zen.
If it has sound in it, that's usually something that I've cobbled together.
That's at least 50% of it.
At least.
Yes, audio is at least 50% of the audio podcast of Unend. And I do all of our recording and editing and all the sound design, sound effects, as well as creating all the original music and soundtrack and score for Unend as well.
I'm going to dive into the nitty gritty throughout season 1, but I first want to open up the gates. And this is just a personal question that I really felt special to open the show up with this. But what does Unend mean to the three of you? Like, what were some key themes and ideas you wanted to explore throughout the season and perhaps maybe the whole series?
Oh, my goodness. What a great question, Jared.
For me, it was, among other things, a much anticipated genre shift. We love the story of MIDST. We're very satisfied with the story we told there. And at the same time, we were all really excited to stretch our wings in some new directions. So we've mentioned before, but Star Trek is a major, major inspiration for Unend. And that feeling of having a home that travels with you. So the setting of the ship is kind of as much of a character as any of the crew. And that feeling of every week you're in a new place, you're pushing always on into new territory, and yet you're surrounded by the same people and the same place in a way.
Yeah, that's a huge question. And I'm going through my Rolodex in my mind. I think what really pleases me about Unend and kind of the difference that it represents from the original MIDST story, where the first was ultimately kind of a financial thriller, Unend is more of a, I think, kind of a philosophy thriller in a way.
Yes.
There's a lot of like cognitive, a lot of thought related discussion between characters, a lot of exploration of what is the self and what is behavior and how does that all kind of like work and interact with one another, just as the members of the crew on a exceptional voyage might work together. So there's some fun both structural and characterful interactions that happen there that I am very personally pleased by. Yeah.
Yeah. I like how you phrased that question, Jared. What does Unend mean to us? And I think what it means to me is, well, let's put it this way. The old saying that you write what you know. And we do not know about journeying through strange cosmos, but we are three people on an interesting and unusual journey of our own in this fascinating new adventure in partnership with you all at Critical Role. We are traveling into the unknown. We are a crew on a journey together, pushing forward into mysterious limits. This is a fascinating voyage that we are on, and we, the three of us creating this show, are in the middle of that, in the midst of that experience. And so to create a show that is also about three main characters on a mystic journey in a fascinating new partnership into infinite potential is, I think, a personal story that is very real for us, and telling it in kind of an analogy-based way through Unend is meaningful and helpful, and helps us kind of make sense of our human experience. So it's personal.
There's a bit of a parallel to the physical storytelling and what's actually happening in the world of the cosmos, where you are exploring the furthest reaches of what you can do with this story.
Yes.
We've never done this before.
We don't know what's out there. We don't know. We worry. Can we do it? Do we have what it takes? Just like the crew, it feels real.
We're still working on the skill of writing a main character that doesn't have imposter syndrome. Maybe our next show. Yes. Yeah, I have a note in here with my notes about it's a presence in our work.
Executed perfectly in those final episodes with the granddaughter. I loved that. And there was moments also, and also Cleo. Yes, kind of having this this identity crisis on like whether or not, especially in Brochurig, but we could get to all that in a second.
Oh, we will.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
You made a great point, and I'm just going to jump to this one real quick. Yeah, these conversations with the Bocular Man and this becoming aware, this like to and fro of what is truth and what is belief, these stories we tell ourselves. I loved that, especially through like the perception and the experience of instinct and logic, using the fold light as an example of like, it feels like the mechanisms, and you have these instinctual pulls: halt, go back, move, stop, but also learning and adapting to the world that's happening around you. I thought was you three. Yeah.
Well, thank you,
Jared.
You could just, compliment us straight for an hour. We could just
I do this every time I'm around you three. That's all it is. It's just me just geeking out.
But that isn't that often, Jared. So we got to stock up. We have imposter syndrome to beat down.
And that's what I'm here for, to alleviate that. But yeah, how did you know that these were going to be philosophical conversations you were going to dive into, or were this like, I like the idea that if it was just like naturally coming up as you were exploring it all, was like, no, we want to talk about these things?
That's a great question as well. I would say, gosh, let me get my thoughts in order here.
I have some thoughts that are in order.
Well, if you would like to begin.
Well, I think this comes in two parts, and I'll just be the facilitator here because I want the two of you to talk about it more. The whole mindfulness angle of Unend, I think, really comes out when we're focusing on Dot and Mother Artifice, and then in another way when we're focusing on Merlin and the biological man. And with Dot and Artifice, those themes were definitely present from the very beginning of our concepting and planning of the story. But Merlin's, spoilers ahead, Merlin's body swap with the the Bocular Man actually was one of those late stage decisions, kind of like double Saskia bodies in MIDST, where all we had down was that like perhaps something crazy happens to someone in the depths. And to be clear, like it wasn't improvised in the moment. It was like before we were getting ready to record. It was like, well, we got to decide what happens here.
Yeah, just on that particular episode too, we were actually rather challenged by it. We had kind of written ourselves into almost an unwinnable scenario. The characters were trapped in situations. Others were like the circumstances that the ship was in, in the depths of the fold, trying to figure out how to survive. And every solution that we threw at the wall was like, oh, nope, that would get screwed up here, or that's why it's not possible, or because of this previously established fact, that can't happen. And as we were problem solving it, I can't even remember whose idea it was, but there was just a light bulb moment, literally, where we were like, oh shit, what if? What if this happened?
Yeah,
what
this
if
is
those
like
two
literally
swapped?
the only way to solve this.
Yeah, and just the immediate chills. Like, oh, of course, that's what we have to do. Like, followed the feeling, and that's what ended up happening. But it's also produced this great opportunity for dialogue between these two characters who, from the jump, do have a connection, but through that encasement exchange now have this totally different sort of perception on that experience, and how and in what ways they will grow or change or behave is a question for season 2, perhaps. But I really like the way that that's begun in season 1, and how Merlin and the biological man start to kind of figure their shit out.
It's very cool.
To your specific question, Jared, about these investigations of self and consciousness and thought, to have Merlin and the biological man have this very real kind of consciousness adventure together ties into those bigger themes. As Sarah mentioned, Unend is very inspired by Star Trek, and one of Star Trek's hallmark themes is what it means to be human.
Yeah.
And like Star Trek, or like any good adventure story, Unend is the story of 2 different journeys. The physical one that the ship is actually traversing, and the interior journey, the even more insane and extraordinary quest that the characters on the ship are on. So these are 2 parallel voyages, the interior voyage and the exterior voyage. And while the exterior is a little bit more about cosmology, the interior is more about the self.
Yeah.
Who are you? Who can you be? Who will you become? And what does it mean to be you?
What is thinking?
Yeah, what even is this?
Yeah.
So,
How are we doing this?
Yeah, classic sci-fi.
You just don't think? Sorry?
Yeah, classic sci-fi. What it means to be human, and how to deal with being human, and how to understand it, all while traversing the limits of reality.
All while dealing with space anomalies.
Yeah.
Jumping back to the topic of the granddaughter and Mother Artifice, Zen, you had a really insightful perspective on that relationship dynamic. Can I invite you to speak more to that?
Oh, about sort of the mutual quests of Artifice and the granddaughter? Yes, well, I think it's pretty clear by the end of season 1 that Artifice and the granddaughter have known similar quests. Artifice is well familiar with the kind of journey that Dot is on, and it's nice. It's going back to the whole imposter syndrome thing. I mean, in many ways, Dot's journey is my journey, as all of our characters' journeys are our journeys. And having a mentor like Mother Artifice yell helpful advice at my character, whose struggles I know well, is a nice sort of externalized form of therapy. So yeah, Artifice is yelling all kinds of stuff that I just find so helpful. Thanks, Artifice. I love being therapied by him by way of my proxy, Dot.
I was having that exact same thought toward the final conversation between Dot and Mother Artifice, where I was like, oh, Zen, they're just talking to themselves right now. This is what it feels like when you're caught up in the moment before a show or before a big meeting. I don't know, things that people do. A big responsibility. I've recently listened to a podcast where they mentioned something about the scary hour. There's that one scary hour of the day where you got to do something. Yeah. Where it's this whole idea of this, like, you're caught up in your head and you're spiraling out, but then you have that other voice that's just trying to soothe you throughout all that. And no, that was great.
And it can be helpful to externalize these voices. I mean, to journal or to make affirmations, but to literally voice act 2 different characters play acting a struggle that you are dealing with is try it.
We would recommend.
Yes.
Yeah, the characters are struggling to understand what it means to be human, but they're helping us understand what it means as well.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful to them for that.
And in that same relation with Cleo, I feel like, I don't want to say poor Cleo, but in a way, there's the
It's
Bocular
okay.
Man.
You can
with,
say poor Cleo.
But there's Merlin who has the Bocular Man, and there's Mother Artifice, and maybe Dot doesn't necessarily feel like they can be as open. At least we learn toward the end, yes, they do. But like, there's that point a lot where they had to go off to the side. They didn't want. They were surprised. Cleo, on the other hand, she's trying to reach out to people, and she's kind of has to deal with it all herself in her own space.
Yeah,
she's got Omelet, but there's a lot of this, there's this personal journey that she's has to figure out herself. At least that's what I gather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she doesn't really have a companion going into the journey a way of a lot of people have pre-existing relationships. She's just kind of showed up from nowhere. She hasn't met anyone before. She wasn't involved in the design or the development of the ship. She's frankly kind of underqualified other than her connections to her barony. So although she is very extroverted and very charming and quickly sets about making friends, she is also very alone in a way.
Man, I wish I could be like Cleo sometimes and just dive right into a whole new, where everybody just knows everybody and just go, hey, what's up? I'm here.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like people reinvent themselves when they go off to college or move to a new town. If you're in a situation where no one knows you, that can be very freeing if there is a way that people perceive you where you're from that you wish to move on from, to grow out of, and to present the person that you want to be to a whole fresh new set of people. And she definitely takes advantage of that as best she can.
This conversation may have kind of covered this, but I mean, like, how did you come to create? Or create feels very TTRPG, but also or find these characters.
Have we rolled them?
Yeah,
in a way. But like,
did we use standard array or point buy?
But was there like Matt? Were you always thinking? No, I love the idea of playing this cosmological scientist.
Well, I'll just yes. My entire life I have adored the sort of the mad scientist archetype is a very attractive one for me, and I definitely think that Merlin represents a sort of a fusion of some of those like childhood heroes that I would look up to. Carl Sagan, for one. There's definitely an air of he is 100% the person that I think I would like to be one day, someone who's very self-assured and very aware of and informed on many facts and can understand his place in things very well. And as just a weird little guy traveling through time the way I am, I aspire to that sort of perspective and the opportunity to be at peace maybe with where I'm at. And if I could chime in with an exterior perspective, like Merlin is an archetype that is very essentially Matt. And I remember thinking back to when we were still coming up with our characters, you were kind of on the fence about whether you wanted to allow yourself to play this professor scientist guy because, like, I don't know, you didn't want to do too much of a Mary Sue, or don't let me put words in your mouth. No, that was a conversation that we had. I think when we were starting to kind of get our ideas down about who the kind of main protagonists of Unend were going to be, we were all thinking a lot about, like, having come off of MIDST, what were those characters like in Lark, Phineas, and Mockweep? What are the ways that we want to sort of explore, other attributes of ourselves or other aspects of kind of what a character could be? And maybe this is too much of a throwback to MIDST, but I'll just remark on a brief story there. When we were putting Phineas together, originally there was sort of this idea that he almost could have been Jonas Spar and had that like, oh yeah, this is the guy who's in charge, he knows what's going on, he's perfect, but we decided to have him be the shorter guy and the not quite as fancy armor next to him, and like peeled that part of the character off and made Phineas what Phineas was. So to then be able to pivot and do just the like the most, I guess, and be like totally free to be an expert in the world that I guess I have had a hand in crafting was very intoxicatingly cool. I love it. Yeah, Merlin is neat. I like Merlin a lot. That's where he kind of came from. But let's hear about Cleo.
I will admit, a part of my mind is always thinking about what these characters are going to be like to draw. And I just thought like a huge amount of glowing pink hair would be fun to draw.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to allow myself that.
I understand it. I design many things in MIDST simply because I want to have a fun time sound designing them. So creating a character with cool hair so you can draw cool hair, I get it.
And Cleo is, she's just a lot more similar to me at baseline than Lark ever was. So it's interesting playing her. There's a lot less like meta storyteller stuff going on, like what should the character do, what would be good for the character. I have a much more easily graspable, intuitive sense of how she would feel and what she would do and how she would react in situations.
And she has incredible hair.
Yes.
Incredible
well,
cotton
I know
candy
what that's
flow
like.
hair.
That's true.
There is a lot of, I've noticed some great juxtaposition between your MIDST characters and your Unend characters, which are really fun and interesting. You have the hardened Lark and the bubbly fun. Cleo, you have the very unsure of themselves Phineas and the very sure of themselves Merlin.
Perhaps too
but also,
sure of himself, yes.
And then we have the dark brooding Mock, and then we have
the dark brooding daughter.
Yeah. Well, Mock Weep's kind of he's sort of a maniac, and
he's very silly.
He's very crazy and over the top.
So fun.
Yeah.
He's a loudmouth and totally weird and capering. And then, of course, Dot is quiet. Yeah, quiet and shrinking.
Dot isn't very silly that we've seen so far.
No. I don't know. Perhaps they have a deeply comical sense of mirth that is yet to be revealed. Stay tuned for season 2, and
It's
they
repressed.
bust out. Yeah, and I mean, maybe conversely, I in my day-to-day life enjoy and have fun and prefer to kind of lean into an extrovert lifestyle, but within really, I am at my core a person more like Dot, a person who, and you see now in season 1, since we're talking full of spoilers, Dot is aspiring to something. They are searching for a self that they yearn to be or become. So yeah, for me, coming up with Dot was just born out of an interest in exploring that kind of inner person and seeing if I spun that element of myself off into a character, what would that experience be like? What can I learn from this? Dot is sort of born out of the more anxious and quiet and shy parts of myself. And it's really illuminating and fun and edifying to kind of personify that part of the self and see what they do and what do they experience and detect and what do they struggle with and how can they grow. And by kind of watching Dot navigate this journey, I have learned some really nice things about navigating my own journey in my own way. And it really helps to have a spectral horned mother with a loud voice yelling helpful insights at me. Boy, that's just the best.
And of course, from a lore perspective, each of these 3 characters also granted opportunities to flesh out parts of the cosmos, the Bernhard and Gödel sort of academic institution, the United Baronies, and the Mothers.
Yes, and I've really, really wanted to explore and learn more about the Mothers since they debuted, and Dot and Artifice are born out of my interest.
Yeah. Fans are out there saying, we want to know more about the Mothers. Like, we also want to know more about the Mothers.
So do I.
So what do we learn? There's a dark cenobium deep under where it's silent and dark, and that's what we learned.
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
There's more still to come. Stay tuned.
And there's something called realization with a capital R that Dot is looking for.
Mm-hmm. Aren't we all?
Yeah, now I do want to kind of tap into you all did such a cool job of dropping these little breadcrumbs throughout the first episode. These chevron emblems, the keychains, throughout that intro. You keep us waiting until we finally see the ship. The ship. Which is so rich with detail and ingenuity. The layers that are of each deck was so fun to explore. So this is another big question. Where did the concept originate from? And let's just start there. My next follow-up would be, how do the mechanics of the ship function? Like, how did this all come? I know there's so much in that, and we're still figuring it out, but I do want to know. I want a little bit of juice from this. Yeah, if we can get into it.
Oh, what a great question, Jared. Thank you. Yes. Well, any sci-fi story needs a cool sci-fi flagship, whether it's your Millennium Falcon from Star Wars or your Enterprise from Star Trek. Such a journey requires a dope vessel, and designing the ship was a huge and lengthy part of coming up with Unend. It is the foundation, it is the backbone, it is the core, in a way, of the entire story. And even though it kind of takes a back seat to the actual action and adventure of the podcast, it is the home of the podcast. So yeah, designing the ship was quite a journey in and of itself.
Also, the cinematic moment when it was revealed that you alluded to that was like one of the first moments that we all cohered around as like, this is a thing we want to tell. And we did a lot of research together.
Oh yeah, that was research.
Watching a lot of like important ship movies. And particularly paying attention to that moment when the ship is revealed.
Yes.
Particularly if there's a lot of music. I mean, think about Titanic, think about Atlantis. God, Atlantis is such a good ship reveal moment.
So
Treasure
good.
Planet also has a good one.
Come on, Atlantis throw is so good.
Yeah, every sci-fi has the ship reveal or the ship launch.
Yeah.
And we want to do our own spin on it. And I love a good ship. I am kind of fascinated by just ships.
Yeah, you kind of have the ship design brain.
Bug, maybe.
I can't. Like, I can think of what characters are wearing. If it was just me alone trying to come up with a ship, I don't think I could do it. It's good there's three of us. There's
such a cool like simplicity to the exterior of the design, but then inside all of the different layers with the swimming pool, the atrium is let's talk about the atrium.
Sure.
This cool retro vibe in the center of the ship?
Yeah.
Was this just like you just wanted something cozy? What was the...
Yeah, why not? Every ship needs a cool lounge. Yeah. And a quick note to our listeners, if you have not been to the MIDST.co and checked out the Unend ephemera, there is an entire page on the website full of art and additional information and resources, including images of the interior and exterior of the ship.
Yeah, that image of the interior of the ship has now been used for the interlude, the YouTube version, so you can see it there too.
Yeah,
that's by
Frank. It's the background. It's the background on my monitor.
Oh yeah,
it's so good.
There's a layout of the stagecoach, the ship's lifeboat, which is there as well.
Another ship design largely led by Zen.
Yeah. Yes. But yeah, the atrium. I mean, the central zone of a ship. Think back on Star Wars and scenes of the cast of original Star Wars sitting in that weird round room with the hollow chess table and Luke messing around with his remote lightsaber practice. You've got to have that sort of central gathering place, or the cockpit. Similarly for Star Trek, you've got the bridge or 10 forward. You've got these kind of landmark locations, set pieces where action really just lives.
Kind of natural gathering places, or where characters would themselves want to spend time. So I think a lot of what ended up going into the schematic of the ship was sort of the stuff that we also thought would be cool to go and be in and around and interact with and have characters experience situations in. So
the ship can be as large and as grand as you want, but ultimately, if you want to have interesting scenes between characters, you kind of need human scale places that you can return to again and again.
Yeah.
And you just made it the most vibey spot.
We hope so, yeah. Well, we would be remiss if we did not reveal that we all just love the entire historic story and real adventure and journey of the Titanic. We've researched the shit out of it. And long before even
That is, seen the movie many times, speaking for myself.
Well, Matt and I in particular have shared a lifelong fascination with the Titanic. And the kind of luxury experience where you're in this kind of comfortable and lavish, huge vessel cruising through the dark ocean, but you're doing so in fine appointments, in nice chambers with comfortable furnishings and good food being served to you.
Fancy chef is there.
Yes, all while insane danger lurks just outside the windows. So kind of bringing that Titanic feel to the expedition. And now, of course, we know that the ship essentially sinks at the end, much like the Titanic. So having a luxurious cruise ship that is fated for doom, sitting in that atrium and watching the end of reality beam towards you, or in the control deck, as it was in the episode. But yeah, atrium is a good spot.
And the fact that the ship is constructed out of a supernatural material gave us all kinds of extra fun toys to play with. So,
which you could learn about the finding of that in another story.
Yes, you can. Check out Moonward.
Yes.
Yeah. And just speaking of ship design in general, I had a lot of fun designing the Stagecoach as kind of a counterpart to the sleek grandeur of the big ship. The Stagecoach is inspired by real world, like World War II helicopters and aircraft. And a fun fact, in order to
talk about research.
Yeah, my research for the Stagecoach was pretty fun. The Stagecoach is heavily influenced by a very legendary, ominous, real-world helicopter known as the Hind.
Why do you say ominous?
Because it's a terrifying gunship. It's one of the most powerful and lethal military.
Like ominous to the enemy.
Yeah,
not ominous to fly. I mean, I think all helicopters are probably ominous.
Flight is complicated.
Flight is very scary.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Hind helicopter is a long time. It's one of the weirdest looking it looks like a spaceship. It's bizarre. It's got 2 cockpits. It is insane. It's like the size of a semi truck. It's one of the fastest helicopters on Earth. It's crazy. But among many World War II airplane and other kinds of aviation research, I notably, at last, it's my time to reveal.
Yes.
I can fly a Hind helicopter.
In theory.
No, kind of in practice. If you sat me in one in real life, I could start it, I could take it off, and I could fly it and probably not crash it. In studying the Hind, got a super hyper-technical flight simulator called DCS, which is notoriously hard to learn. And it basically is a flight simulator that features a Hind helicopter that is 100% completely technically accurate and insanely hard to learn how to use. And I spent 3 months practicing how the fuck to even turn on this, even get it off the ground. I have learned how to functionally and realistically operate a Russian Hind helicopter gunship.
And there's nothing digital in it.
No,
is that correct?
It's a completely analog electronic helicopter that predates conventional
Screens,
modern computers. So it's a super retro analog helicopter. And that was a fun part of designing.
The inspiration.
Yeah, and learning all about real world aviation has played a lot into designing the Stagecoach and designing the ship in general. So that's been fun.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. Yeah. And I love Everett and Mickey's relationship with not only that we learn about their long history with this one of a kind, vessel that they fly, but there's so many quiet moments. Just to sidebar on just another couple characters. I know we have so many fun other characters on the ship. Kino, Del Belsabad, Ripley, Rawfield, Hambing. So many fun. But I really love these quiet moments that we get between Everett and Mickey that are so big and touching toward it. Really scares me. I'm going to be honest, you three. It really scares me about what's going to happen with these two in this story, because you've created such beautiful, tender moments between them that I love it. I love their long history that you guys got going on with this. And also this like heart to MIDST. We learned so much about MIDST through these two.
Yeah, Everett's kind of the MIDST avatar.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, we obviously are leaving MIDST behind in this story, but we wanted to bring MIDST with us. And so, Everett is born and raised MIDST, and Mickey is born and raised Sequester, two of our best known locations from the previous shows. So to sort of bring embodiments of those two islets along on the journey.
They're our hometown girls.
Yeah, and kind of see the harmony between them, see their shared history and knowledge. It kind of helps us feel like a little slice of home is coming along with us.
Well, and they are themselves very homing too. Like they are such a calming presence, especially in Mickey, I think, throughout the course of the show. Like no matter what's going on, just very even keel, like helps kind of renegotiate some different like emotional experiences that different characters have. They are the core. They are the heart. Yeah.
Everett's kind of a hot-tempered wild card at times.
And it's nice to see for the first time like a pre-existing and pre-established relationship between characters. We've had characters in our shows sort of become, entering into relationships, but to have characters who are already married, they already have chemistry, they've been together for a long time. There's a nice familiarity to that experience, I think.
And the stagecoach is already their home. They have lived and worked on it for years together before coming here. So the crew has varying levels of familiarity and comfort with the ship itself. But I just loved the idea that no matter how far they went, like they had their home with them in the hangar. And if Everett or Mickey was ever feeling homesick, they could just go into the stagecoach, shut the windows, and imagine that it was like a normal shipping run.
Yeah, the stagecoach feels really homey to me. It's nice.
And they're also willing to welcome others into that home by constantly having these cookouts. Also bringing the home to the crew is also very touching. Just on last bit on the ship, I want to talk about the fold light. We at least gotta talk about the fold light before you. Yes. This like quantum computer-esque looking,
lava lamp.
Very cool design lava lamp with full. Yes, let's dive in. Let's dive in on this. Where did it come from? I know I keep dropping this. Where did it come from? How did you do this? But what was the approach to building this out?
Well, for a story set decades in the future from MIDST, we wanted to exhibit some interesting new technology that would have been impossible or at least unheard of in the MIDST era. And, usually the formula goes that light plus fold equals terrors. So that's bad. So you probably wouldn't want to do something like put fold inside of a light bulb. But what if you could? What if technology had advanced to such a level that people had figured out how to... And we kind of hint at how there are various people and organizations who've already figured out how to do this in MIDST, but what if you could craft terrors intentionally? What if you could, like, terrors are only regarded as bad and scary because they are so unpredictable. They could result in just about anything. But if you could have a hand in influencing the terrors that were happening, then you have superpowers. So
Well, and it's interesting to kind of compare that to different technological advances that have happened for humanity over the years too, thinking about like matter and antimatter reactions or splitting the atom or like, kind of bringing together things that were sort of previously thought, I don't know if those should go together, fire and water, I don't know. But then you have steam turbines and like that is what so much of our current power infrastructure is based on. It's just, we really wanted to explore kind of that next big like tech step that was beginning to be explored in small bits and pieces and ways in previous MIDST and in Moonward too, that we now get to kind of see fully implemented like in a like hardcore light bulb. Light bulbs are just cool also. Like why not make more things out of light bulbs? I'm always saying that. But just, figuring out a way to kind of have that warp core style thing, that main engine, that
centerpiece.
Yeah, that thing that like we all know and all of the characters know is responsible for so much of the wondrous things that the ship is capable of doing.
Maybe even too responsible.
Oh, perhaps. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to kind of think about what would that technological leap look like and how could the characters sort of use that and leverage it, and how does that technology reflect what the characters are experiencing too.
Mm-hmm. And what is more fragile and delicate than a light bulb? And to have the sort of entire success and functionality of your voyage hinging on a light bulb.
That's great.
I think was a intentional move on our part to underscore the sort of tenuousness, the fragility, the danger of this technology. It is incredible and it is magical, but it's a light bulb.
Well, that's why they had a spare.
Yeah, but like just to kind of underscore that, like, this we are at the razor's edge between incredible adventure and just insane precarious disaster, and so we never feel entirely safe.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Truly though, truly.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this cool aspect to this ship again. This like we keep talking about, it's magic. There's this magical element to it. I love the bricking, the schlooping, the
dooring,
the elevating. These this like liquefied matter that happens through it. But then at the same time, and like you're saying, this cutting edge of technology where we're combining these two elements that should not go together at all. But then at the same time, we're using punch discs, which is very analog to the MIDST cosmos. We're using these discs that are specifically designed for just parking or go up, which is just so fun and it's just so cool. Is this trifecta of different elements coming together to create this one of a kind, heart of the show.
Well, we love cumbersome technology, so no matter how advanced technology becomes in the MIDST cosmos, we ourselves can't let go of silly systems, so they'll always be there.
And it's an audio podcast, so you need weird clattering contraptions and things that make good noise.
Things are just better that way.
So to jump on to the next bit, I want to talk about I guess there's a lot that I want to talk about with the cosmos as a whole. I first of all just really want to dive in and just really the diverse locales that we visit on this voyage. I'm not just talking about the firmament or the deep or the delta. I'm talking like the uppermost monitoring outpost. So the Micahberg Grotto, Acuta, the Delagny on the Delta, these little bits and moments that just flush out this world so much more that just feel so you. It's so fun. The revisiting of the city of Stationary Hill.
Oh yeah. Should we start there?
Let's start there.
Let's just start there. Basically, like, what was it like building the descriptions and the lore, and even like what the spaces sounded like?
It was emotional.
I
mean, we knew that we were only going to see Stationary Hill once in this season, and we needed to make it count. It would be totally new for people who were coming to Unend without any previous familiarity, so it had to stand on its own as a
distinct location.
But we also wanted to let fans of MIDST like see their old friend grown up a little bit.
Exactly.
And we imagined a very prosperous, optimistic future for Stationary Hill. After all they went through in MIDST, we just wanted to see how they had succeeded and become the best version of that town.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, in places where folks center the human experience, that community works well for the humans that are there. Stationary Hill feels like a very familiar place in a lot of ways, but this opportunity to see it again now, like Sarah said, decades later, it's such a it's comforting to know that things worked out.
Yeah.
That they're all right over there. Like, they're figuring it out. I'm sure they continue to have their challenges, and the remnants of the terror still are present and affect the day-to-day lives of the citizens, but they found a way to bring into a harmony some of those crazy, chaotic changes that we did get to experience in those previous stories.
And they had some formative experiences that taught them the value of community. So I like to think that those values and those lessons have kind of stayed in the DNA of the town.
Yes.
Utilized it to their own way too. I mean, we see Patricia's bakery doing just fine.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we built Unend specifically with new listeners in mind. Obviously, if you're a previous listener of MIDST and you know all about the cosmos, then you're going to find many things to enjoy. But we wanted to be very specific in letting this work and be intact and be understandable to someone who'd never heard any of this ever before. You should be able to enjoy any MIDST content in any order. That's always been our goal. And so to assume, for example, that a listener, this will be their first time to this town. They don't even know what this is. They've pressed play on this podcast, and here we go. And to set up this bonkers bonanza town where you are stunned as a new listener, especially, like, this is crazy. This is the most otherworldly, wild ass place. There's a person with a man for a leg, and weird districts, and everything's huge and strange, and there's ships hovering overhead. Things couldn't possibly get any stranger than this. And to have that be the absolute baseline, like the bottom of the barrel. This is just where we're taking off. This is the least strange that it will be. I think was a very intentional choice for us to try to set up this escalating level of cosmic magnitude that you think this is bananas.
And the fact that scene was told through Dot's POV.
Yeah, it's specifically written with this newcomer a person who has never been anywhere, who's never seen anything before. So to have the experience viewed through the lens of the granddaughter's perspective is also designed to help bring a new listener to this wondrous and strange world, because we're about to blast off on an adventure and things are going to get even more crazy. So starting it there was, I think, the right move.
We had a lot of ground to cover in this season. I know that, no one knew where the season was heading. That is, we did. I'm speaking about presumably the listener community didn't know where the season was heading. Like, are they going to go all the way to the Delta and back? Are we going to see like the Delta and the Fount in the same season? What is the scope of this voyage? We, knowing that the Delta is the end point of this season, more or less, knew that, okay, we have this much time. They got to get to the highest heights. They got to get to the deepest depths. And we wanted to show a really broad cross-section with a lot of variety of all the sights and experiences in between. And to get that done, there are quite a few time jumps, which really just brings me back to that Star Trek-y feeling. Unend is a little bit more episodic than MIDST was. There are more gaps where it's implied that time has elapsed, and perhaps they have seen many interesting things in between the episodes, but it's a journey. There is a lot of ground to cover, and we are giving you, in some ways, the highlights while focusing a lot more on that inner journey, which has a lot more continuity to it than the plot-driven, where are they in physical space part of it.
And every single one of these locations is designed by us in making the show to serve as a vehicle for the simultaneous inner journey, which to us in many ways is the truest journey of this show. I mean, yes, we all love cool adventures and space monsters and dope rocket ships and awesome battles and weird places, and that we love that to death. But every single location exists to produce an experience,
a situation, if you will.
Like every
With
one
themes.
of these is there for a reason and is the way that it is because it brings something forth for each character in their continuing inner quest.
Yeah. So another part of our season outline involved having each of the three protagonists reach a breaking point at some point along the journey. For Dot, that happened first. I'm talking about the the episode where they get to the firmament, and
oh yes,
yeah,
that's true. Where the character is the most out of their element or the least prepared, or confronts what they are the least ready to deal with.
They're sort of tested by something. Yeah,
obviously they are not conclusively transformed by that experience, but it sets up and triggers their cascading domino character situation that they're on. For Merlin, he had a kind of inverse and opposite. He had also similar experience at the very deepest point of their journey. And Cleo's was always intended to be Brocherug, that conversation with her papa that kind of cemented her decision to carry on with the journey. But she also had kind of a mini step along that journey at Akuta when she unexpectedly ran into her cousin. So yes, all these settings were set up to be set pieces for the characters to just have little conversations with each other. Yeah. Which is all a podcast is, really.
A lot of talking.
Yes.
No, they're very fun. They're very cool. I loved Akuta, by the way. Yes, it's which is also the first fold city we get to see. We've ever seen.
I mean, other than Sequester, but that was in a whole nother show.
Sequester felt like more of to me, it just kind of felt more like a town.
Yeah. It's more pastoral.
Where this is like industrial city.
I have something to say about Akuta, actually. I loved it because it pushed against kind of the dichotomy that we had started setting up, where the fold is like a very natural, ancient place that's in harmony with nature and the whims of the fold, and people seem a little bit more enlightened, like the mothers are there, whereas the Un is this like regimented place full of strict systems, and it's what gave rise to the trust. So I just loved showing it. We never wanted things to be that simple, so I loved the opportunity to show a place that is deep in the fold. It has nothing to do with the Un, and it's shitty in its own ways and wonderful in its own ways, but it's not as simple as
and they're just fracking the crap out of this freaking rock.
That was derived from a singular line in Cosma's journal, one of the appendices from MIDST season 2, where she mentioned something about fracking grids on Akuta, which was just a really funny turn of phrase that we always remembered and wanted to come back to someday.
Let's make a whole episode.
I love that. It's so cool. I want to spend a little bit more time there. That was a really cool area, islet. I do want to talk about, let's talk about the extremes now, just real quick. The firmament. Let's start there. The firmament. What the hell? What the hell?
That is an episode I have not returned to.
I remember texting you immediately after I listened to.
You've not listened to it again, you mean?
I have only listened to that episode once. It is very hard to listen to. It's
crazy.
It's scary.
Yeah, it's a scary one. And I think part of the reason we really wanted to press the scary button there was because it was in sort of this like, the traditional celestial, beautiful,
bright,
gorgeous,
and airy and
almost
shimmering.
Heavenly in a way. We're evoking terms like the firmament, which is an old Latin term for like the vaults of heaven. To like, there's just this very pristine kind of gorgeousness to it, and to have cosmic horror happen in a celestially gorgeous place. I don't know. I love that dissonance.
I wonder if there is a genre term for that, because that's something that I love as well. It's like very, very bright horror that occurs
like
in
midday, or like Midsommar or whatever.
Kind of. Yeah, that falls into that, I would say.
Well, one of the main themes of this entire show is, obviously sort of a fantasized, analogous exploration of space. They are not exploring what we would refer to in our universe as space. Their cosmos is different. But one of the things that I find that often is not so often showcased in sci-fi adventure stories like Star Trek or Star Wars, for example, they're not that concerned about being in space. Being in space is pretty normal to them. They're in space all the time. They're just, they're in ships and they just hop in a ship and drive through space and go somewhere. But for me, one of the most insane things about space for real is it is terrifying. It is a horrifying death void. that you are millimeters, you are a hair's breadth from instant annihilation at any moment. So to try to continuously bring into the story of Unend the fear and peril of space, that the higher you go, the more dangerous it gets. The danger levels are increasing constantly. It is so perilous. And to never become comfortable. To say, yeah, magic ship, magic space, whatever, we got this. Let's go blast even higher and see more shit. We're fine.
It was also the first moment that the crew's confidence kind of took a beating. We set up very high spirits, very, buoyed by the grand accomplishments of humankind, this marvelous ship, we can do anything we set our minds to.
God himself could not sink this ship.
And then we batter them over and over and over again with, well, actually.
Yeah, Icarus, you fly too high.
Yeah, like to the point earlier about how like the ship's journey, the light bulb, this rock ship, this bizarre cosmos full of dangers. Life is so much about those fussy edges of things, like, is the temperature a little too high for life to sustain, or is,
Goldilocks.
Yeah, exactly. There is sort of this perfect way that life has given rise, and or is it perfect? And are there, ways to sort of like press against those edges, to challenge what the characters believe to be true, and to make them confront those edges and think about why and how and should we really have done this? I don't know. That for us, I think that was very much where a lot of that thrill came.
Yeah. Well, shall we scoot down to the depths?
The deep.
Yes.
Deep depths.
Spooky.
Yeah, a different
It's a major
vibe
turning point in
entirely.
this one. Yeah. What was it like? Yeah, crafting this sequence.
That was, I would say, the single most difficult episode of Unend Season 1 for us to figure out what we were doing.
Yeah.
Because, as Matt alluded to earlier, we kept creating unwinnable scenarios over and over again.
There's basically no way to survive once you are that deep and this kind of problem happens. There is no solution. You will die. Our characters were dead.
Yeah.
They all died.
Yeah,
There was no way out, and we realized like we have baked them into a situation by following our own rules where there is literally no way out.
We can't improvise our way out of this one, folks, because we've spent 4 seasons setting up laws that exist in this cosmos. Oh, what a drag.
I mean, truly, though, we really had to confront a lot of our own previously established lore. Oh, lore keeper, Jared. That was oh shit, how do we get them out of this? This is so bad. Every way we think about this is so bad. We were like going back to the drawing board on like what is even the shape of the cosmos, and how do things work, and where the heck are they even going? How deep have they really gone? What do we want to demonstrate and prove about all of this? Like, it was hard. It was hard.
Yeah, but what a great environment, though. Just insane, oppressive depths where the very, very matter of the cosmos is basically turned into jelly around you, full of corpses. It's wonderful.
We did research for that, too. I kept thinking of The Abyss, legendary movie. Just the claustrophobic sensation of being surrounded by that much pressure.
Yeah, the perils of submarine. There's a lot of submarine horror in this. I mean, the classic primal fear experience of being in that submarine that's going too deep, and the walls are starting to creak,
and then there's
a
rupture.
Yeah, so like literally, it is just an extrapolation of that classic sinking ship experience. You are too deep underwater. You have exceeded the pressure limit of your hull.
And
what are you going to do?
Every moment that you fail to come up with a solution, the problem is getting worse because gravity, the natural forces of the universe, are pulling you down deeper into the problem that you want to solve. So time is against you too.
And the things that could save you is also the things that are trying to eat at you. You can't put that dilemma of putting in the light bulb is just gonna.
But the fold light is drawing danger to us.
Which you got to hand it to you. 3. I mean, following the rules of your own world is incredibly well. It could be very hard. You know, you don't want to have the Gandalf just calling the Eagles the classic bit at the end where it's like, well, wait, we could have just done this the whole time? Yeah. Where it's, no, you've put yourself in a situation. You didn't have just some flock of whales coming and lifting up the boat at some point, you know?
Yeah, and the fun part is as well that, you know, we have given the ship a certain number of tools and a certain number of resources and facilities, and we set them up at the beginning of the show, and we, even ourselves, did not necessarily know what they would encounter and if those tools would be sufficient. And the answer is they often are not.
I think we were originally hoping to save the spare bulb for much later.
True. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, that was part of it. We did not know that they would need that, and it turned out they did.
We were rifling through the toolkit in that episode, and we're just like, oh, well, we do have the fold light, and it's spare.
It worked out great though, because it really put the squeeze on the morale of the crew, and where we needed the story to go after that point was this crushing realization that, oh, like maybe we're not cut out and as prepared to undertake this expedition as we thought we were. Maybe we need to call it quits and for the crew to ultimately split up.
Yeah, morale takes a hit in that one for sure.
So when we end up on Brucherug at the Delta later, did you always know who the core crew heading to? I mean, it sounds like no from what now I'm getting the answers throughout this conversation. Did you know who the core crew heading to the Delta would be, or was this a conversation literally had at Brucherug when you were recording and figuring this all out?
We knew overall who would be coming. I think there were one or two surprises where we had just gotten particularly attached to certain characters, or they surprised us by their prominence and we didn't feel like we could get rid of them. But we always knew there was going to be a massive shaving down of the crew in that episode, partly for practical reasons. It is very difficult to puppet around a crew of 30 plus people. That was kind of the largest crew that we could reasonably run as 3 people and also kind of sound like a realistic amount of people to operate the ship.
Especially when you have like a whole kitchen crew also along with that.
Of course, I mean, our intention has always been that we have main characters, and they are the focus of the show. And so to find a situation by which we could narrow it down to focus on those characters was the goal. And we seem to have done it.
While also highlighting the immense stakes and fear of this episode. What better way to do that than have most of your crew conveniently go away?
Yes, or die horribly.
So this is the first time that we actually see the Delta, this smorgasbord of the Delta.
Yes.
Which also, I know I texted you guys at the time. I do have to say again, Bertrand Pesto, as sleazy as this guy was, I loved Bertrand Pesto.
I love Bertrand
before we lose Pesto, can we talk about Mr. Pesto a little bit? I have no idea how we're doing on time, but before we leave Brocherug, I think some very fun trivia there. The name of the islet,
Brocherug,
has its roots in... Well, Matt, maybe you should tell this.
Oh, sure. Well, we were discussing Titanic lore earlier in the hour, and there is a notable stopping point for the Titanic as it was making its way out of Europe, and that was the city of Cherbourg in France. It's sort of the most like on the edge of the coast. It's sort of at the end of the mainland from Europe as you are entering the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, that dangerous, harsh mistress of the sea.
So the last chance to turn back.
Exactly.
So we were using Cherbourg as a kind of shorthand for this destination where if there was anyone who needed to leave the voyage, like this is the last chance to do so.
It is the ship's last stop.
But obviously we can't just call it Cherbourg.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we just reversed the word Cherbourg.
We sort of like took the phonemes
the word sounds,
and scrambled them around, and we had a lot of different options, but we just settled on Brocherug because it sounds funny.
Yes, it was originally, I was really trying to get it to be called Burger Hawk, but nobody would know it. Somehow it got downvoted.
That episode in particular had a lot of potential like names for the episode itself and the eyelid of Brocherug that hit the cutting room floor that were just too ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Hostile Hamburger Hotel.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We had a lot of code phrases to kind of evoke that place.
And speaking of name Easter eggs, Bertrand Pesto is very heavily based on a fictional character that we are all extremely fond of. There's a show called Faulty Towers, starring John Cleese, who plays a character named
Basil Fawlty.
Basil Fawlty. So, Basil, Pesto.
Yes.
You see where I'm going?
Yes.
Yeah. Just the harassed and impatient and rude
Overworked
hotel keeper who
Yeah.
hates his job, but his pride is too tied up in it to allow him to do anything else.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, yes. Shout out to Faulty Towers, dear listener. If you have not seen it, go see it immediately. It's one of the most insane things
Do you
ever.
love seeing British people be stressed out?
It's an older show, so it does bear the marks of time for
Yeah.
sure. But absolutely.
Wonderful.
Bertrand Pesto
That's
and
great.
Basil Fawlty are cut from the same cloth. They
Yes.
are one and the same kind of guy.
That's great. This whole, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but this whole episode or the vibe of it reminded me very much of this similar podcast called The Mysterious Secrets of Uncle Bernie's Botatarium. It has kind of like that
I do
same
not know this
vibe.
one.
It's a Jermaine Clement show. It's a very fun. It's a whole podcast story. Yeah,
Thank you for the
But
rec.
that's what I thought the relationship was, because it had that the music you guys are playing in it, and this whole seascape
that's
vibe
a
is
fun
very
story.
cool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yes. Fun fact: the music for Brocherug was played on a Baroque clavichord. I have a friend who's a Baroque musician who very kindly lent me his historic instrument, and it was Sarah who played the clavichord. There's a sort of melody line that comes in.
It was just slightly out of tune, especially on the lower
clavichords
keys.
are very hard to keep
Yes,
in.
well,
Yeah,
we intentionally-
No, it worked for us.
Yeah, well, we intentionally let the clavichord slip very slightly out of tune in order to give it this kind of clangorous, kind of dilapidated sound.
Wow.
And Sarah composed that dun 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 kind of marching. Yeah, and
Welcome
in
to
fact,
the Lovely on the Delta.
and performed that melody line during that episode. And I took over some of the more just kind of random atmospheric clavichord in the background. But yeah, authentic historic instrumentation for that one. That was fun.
I love that. I love those stories. There's another famous one where I think Hans Zimmer took a baseball bat to an organ to write the theme to I think one of the Pirates of the Caribbean songs is very much like that same thing where it's like this out of tune instrument gives the whole character to this location or vibe. Very cool. Editor's note, it was actually not Pirates of the Caribbean. It was Sherlock Holmes.
The line between music and noise is very permeable.
Yes.
I'll say.
So yeah, as we get further into the Delta, we could just kind of start wrapping it up around here. But I loved this cohesiveness between both the deep fold and the upper un, where things start to kind of feel like they're colliding, this like trash heap mix. There was a line that was dropped which I loved, that it looked like teeth seeping into dark saliva, jagged teeth seeping into dark saliva as it's roiling and bubbling. Beautiful. How fun was it to finally get deep into the Delta?
So fun.
Although our characters were so traumatized and wary that they did keep their distance safely from a lot of it, even just seeing it out of the windows was a fun treat for us.
Yeah, I think we achieved this, wanted to present something that was very distinct. It didn't evoke specifically any of the places we had been before, but kind of like we said, was the result of what if all this stuff was toxically mashed together, but not even in a nice homogeneous soup way, more like a salad where you still see all the distinct pieces of it, but it's all jumbled together. And I hope, the Delta is a place that we have been alluding to and hinting at for a long time.
Yeah.
So,
and it's always been at this arm's reach. Everyone is like, ooh, the Delta.
So I hope it met expectations.
The sickly warped sunset was a very cool description. Also, I loved
an
that.
entirely
very
metaphorical sunset.
Indeed.
Yes,
indeed.
yes.
Up until it wasn't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the fun retroactive foreshadowing of all this sunset, sunset, sunset,
Yes.
almost like the light of a sun, like the light of a sun. What could it mean?
So, seasons of MIDST had 19 episodes each. This season
Yes.
of Unend had 18 episodes, plus an interlude. But we were in some ways playing a little trick on people who might have been expecting 19 episodes. And with the structure of the episodes leading up to the very end, we were hoping to try to lull people into a genuine expectation that, like, we are preparing to go back to base and launch the other half of the expedition. Like, this has come to a close. We learned our lessons. We're not going to stupidly we're not going to stupidly push past this point of obvious danger, because we've done that 2 times before already, and it's been very bad. We have learned. We are intelligent. This is good enough. Let's turn around and go home. But then things happen.
But then reality had a different set of plans.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Us subvert expectations?
Well,
Never.
I have no idea how many people were actually fooled, because I suppose we have developed a bit of a reputation at this point for
Switcheroos.
and yanking the tablecloth out. And
We are a
Don't
fan
worry,
of
we are
twists.
not going to do that anymore.
Yep, we're done with that.
We've gotten it out of our system.
Yeah. From now on, we're going to tell you exactly what's going to happen, and then that exact thing will happen with no deviations.
Yeah. Characters discussing their future plans and how happy they are to return home. Nothing bad can happen from that.
Exactly. Yeah. But coming back around to the beginning of the conversation, why this story of Unend is being told is sort of about what are the stories we tell ourselves, and what do we convince ourselves of, and what does that mean?
Reality is shaped by what we decide to believe and what we decide to reinforce as being true.
Yeah. For the characters, sometimes that takes a very literal approach by being able to, produce a perfect crystal chalice out of the smooth surface of the countertop in dining. Or it's, making a choice to have a conversation with another character. But in each little way, it's kind of that realization, perhaps, of what is your power? How do you influence reality? And how have you taught yourself either to do that or not to do that in different ways?
And can you accept that you might be wrong about most things that you believed?
Meta.
Yeah. Meta shit. I mean, we've got pitch black expanses, a sun, Mother Artifice is gone. And it's still, I want to get down to the bottom of what this beef between Everett and Dot is. This sounds really fun and juicy. Zila has Kanakin's canon camera. That's going to be some fun things in the future. I know this is like a classic cheesy line, but is there anything we can know about season 2?
Well, I will re-evoke, I think, a line from a previous original MIDST Roundtable. This was true then, and it's true now. In classic MIDST fashion, season 1 is the tutorial level. We have done what we did for a reason, because we are going on an adventure, yes, but we're also teaching you things that you will need to know for season 2.
Yeah.
Everything has its place, everything has its purpose, and it's going to start coming together.
We were thinking about season 2 the whole time we were telling season 1. So if anyone was surprised by how quickly we seemed to move through such a momentous voyage, it's because we had places to be and stories to tell.
Yeah, there is a reason that it was done the way that it was in the amount of time that it was, because we are setting you up for what comes next.
We're doing a thing.
We're doing it. We're telling a story in the way that we are because of the way that it is.
Trust us.
Yeah.
But not too much.
Everything you've seen, everything you've learned, everything is there for a reason, and it is going to start coming together in some interesting ways. It's going to be good.
Release control.
Accept
the journey.
Yes.
You will find the way.
What better way to sign off than with that? I think that's the round table, everybody.
There's really nowhere to go from there except season 2.
Yeah, no, that was a perfect sign off. Thank you, Sara, Zen, and Matt for chatting with me. And thank you for creating such a wonderful show. I think I might be one of the biggest fans of this show. So I'm very lucky to be sitting here talking to you.
We live for your live reacts. Please never stop sending those.
Our Slack is always just going off with my reactions.
I can't believe you've done this.
And it is so fun and gratifying for us to be on this journey with you too, Jared.
Yes.
We have never had a lore keeper before whose entire job it is to become familiar with our cosmos and to experience it all sort of through the lens of your learning is the sweetest experience.
Yes.
You are the greatest.
We can
Thank
barely
you.
keep our own lore.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for facilitating
We do not
this.
envy you the task of having to professionally keep track of all the bullshit that we are improvising.
Sorry.
I am the luckiest boy.
It feels a lot like having a professional house cleaner like come over to your incredibly messy home and just you're like, sorry, this is just the way I live. I don't know what to tell you.
Good job tracking
I'm
and
sorry,
memorizing
this is your
everything.
job.
It's incredible.
And to our listeners, if you want to stay connected with us in between seasons, follow or tag us on social media. That's at MIDST Podcast. Or if you're looking to dive deeper into the cosmos, become a Beacon member at beacon.tv or join the fold on mids.co. Members of these platforms will receive ad-free access to episodes, bonus goodies, and MIDST Messages, our monthly behind-the-scenes bonus podcast, which will continue throughout our season break. For even more reality-bending sci-fantasy tales from the MIDST cosmos, check out our comic books from Dark Horse, which is sick. I love them. They're so fun. Woo! Ask for MIDST at your local comic book store or go to darkhorse.com. Thank you for listening and coming along this journey. We look forward to having you with us for Unend Season 2.
It's going to be good. We will see you out there around the cosmos.